Hello there and welcome to the card grotto. I had quite a few requests to show how I made this card. I shared this as part of the Clearly Besotted June 2019 release and I had quite a lot of people ask how I made the look, so I thought I would share that with you today. So first of all, I started off by stamping the Scene It City set. I'm using the London skyline for this and I'm going to stamp it out onto some Fabriano Artistico extra white cold pressed watercolour paper. And I'm using that in my mini misty here because I'm going to stamp it multiple times with lots of different colours of distress ink. So I'm using this distress ink mini cubes. I found that it worked quite well because I'm just adding a small amount of colour onto this stamp. I want to make sure that my paper is right into the corner here so that I can keep managing to line it up properly. And then what I'm doing is I'm just adding the colour as I go along and stamping each one separately. I find that that would work a bit better than trying to blend all the colours onto the stamp and stamp in one go. When I originally stamped this, I did try and use a cloth to wipe away some of the colour on the edges of where I've coloured, but I found that actually the distress inks just tend to blend themselves together, which is really nice. I'm just making sure that I'm going over where I have already stamped, sort of blending the colours together on the stamp, and when I've stamped them out, like I said, they blended quite nicely together, and I do think that that looks nice just on its own, but I am going to add some ink into the inside portions. So what I'm doing here is just using those distress ink cubes and I'm just smushing them onto my glass mat, and then I'm going to mix a bit of water with them to be able to use as like a watercolour paint. So the distress ink colours that I'm using are Picked Raspberry, Abandoned Coral, Dried Marigold, Mustard Seed, Twisted Citron, Mowed Lawn, Broken China, Mermaid Lagoon, Chipped Sapphire and then Wilted Violet. In my original card I did finish with pink at the end, but for this card I did manage to lay out my colours a little bit better and I just used the rainbow colours on their own. So here I've picked up a bit of water onto my paintbrush and I'm just adding that onto the distress ink, like I said, to make a watercolour, and then I'm literally going to paint that on the inside of the buildings. You could, if you didn't want to have the lines showing, you could try and sort of add a bit more of the colour and sort of blend your brush a bit more. Because the distress ink is water reactive, those lines will disappear eventually, but I quite liked having the lines showing, and originally I was actually going to have the lines a lot more visible. After watercolouring the whole thing, I was then going to put it back in my mini misty and I was going to stamp over the top so that all of the lines became a bit more visible. Once I'd finished it, I decided that actually I quite liked it so that they were kind of you could kind of see them sort of popping through, but they weren't too visible, if that makes sense. And like I said, I personally like that look, but you could do it in different ways. So I'm just going through the different colours here. I'm trying to get them to blend between the colours, so I'm using a fair amount of water, but not a huge amount that it's going to puddle. I want to make sure that all of the watercolour is going to stay inside of the lines. I'm using a very small paintbrush here. I'm using a size 2 round paintbrush. I personally just find that quite helpful to use smaller paintbrushes when I'm colouring a smaller area. I want to be a bit quite precise with this. Like I said, I do want them colours to blend, but I want to make sure that I get it into all of the nooks and crannies and don't go outside of the lines. How I have my camera set up, I can't see that well where I'm actually painting, I'll be honest with you. I don't have the best eyesight, and so I'm kind of struggling a bit to see exactly. So as you'll see on camera here, there are a few little spaces that I've missed, and once I pick this up and sort of move it closer to my eyes, I can see that. So I do go back in and add those in just so that you know. So I'm just going through here. I decided to keep the part of the bridge solid just because of how I'm sort of colouring it in. I didn't want to have those lines there, but for the London eye I did keep that so that you could see through it. So just filling in those details there. Like I said, I'm trying to make sure that the inks are sort of blending together, and then just going to fill in the London eye there. And this part of the video you can kind of dismiss, but I wanted to keep it in just to show you. So I'm going to start on the water reflections part below the stamped image. And here I mixed my distress inks with quite a bit of water, and I found that I didn't get the look that I wanted to. So what I've done is I've kind of just let those dry slightly, and then I redid all my smushing on my glass mat and just added a lot less water in, as you can see. So the colour is a lot more vibrant here, and I'm getting a better look on these scribbles. So what I've done for the watercolour reflections literally is just me scribbling. I think a lot of people thought it was something different. It really is just me scribbling the paintbrush down. So I'm going in with a sort of heavier hand towards where the stamp meets the bottom of the, or the top of the watercolour reflection kind of thing, as opposed to the horizon line slightly. And I'm just moving the colour downwards, and I'm sort of moving my paintbrush like I would a pencil if I was scribbling. And so I want to get some sort of harsher lines sort of towards the bottom in a very scribbly form. That's kind of like how reflections would be on water. Obviously these aren't true reflections because I'm not kind of having them in the same shape as the buildings. I just wanted it to kind of look a bit arty, reflection-y type thing. So I'm just going in with my pink here at the end. And I'm just kind of, like I said, scribbling, but as you'll see, some of the colours don't match up completely where they are on the stamped image. So I do go back in and just make sure that where the blue is on the stamped image is where the blue is on the reflection. So just moving that further along slightly, just to make sure that that's a little bit darker there. And then I do the same with the green and the orange as well, just to sort of move them along. I think that my original card did come out a bit better in terms of these scribbles, these reflections. I think possibly I wasn't really thinking about it at the time when I made it, and I think they looked a bit nicer. I had probably a bit more of a free-flowing hand, whereas this time I know I'm doing it on camera. I know that I'm trying to show someone how to do it. I don't think I was as free with it as I was in my original card, so I'm not sure it came out as well as I'd hoped. I do think the watercolouring on the buildings came out better, but I'm not sure that the reflections did. But that's what happens sometimes. So to finish off the card, I just added it to a card base with some foam tape, added a bit of black and white patterned paper to the bottom, and then a strip of black cardstock just to kind of even out the card design as a whole, and then stamped that sentiment there at the top. So there you can see the two side by side. As I said, I like different things on different ones. Sometimes when you redo something, you learn a bit more and you get better at it. Sometimes, like I said, I think I overthought it maybe, and I don't think it came out as well as I'd hoped. But, you know, that's what happens sometimes. So links to the products that I have used will be in the description bar on YouTube and also over on my blog. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you soon.